Good afternoon. I have 3:01. We are called to order. This is a special meeting of the Education Outreach and Training Committee of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, City and County of San Francisco. Madam Clerk Administrator, roll call, please.
Member Oka?
Present.
Oka present. Member Highland?
Present.
Highland present. Member David?
Present.
David present. And Chair Pilpel.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't anticipate any agenda changes, but I did want to take an opportunity to check who's here. Do we have Mr. Warfield from the Library Users Association present? Thank you. Do we have a representative from Supervisor Campos's office? I'm seeing not at the present time. We'll come back to that in a second. Do we have the clerks? Yep. I see one. I see two clerks. And do we have a representative from the Arts Commission?
Yes, however, I was going to ask for a continuance because Howard was
Okay, we'll get to that very shortly. All right. Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Do we have Mr. Hartz? We do. Do we have a representative from the Police Department? Excellent. I saw two hands. Great. Two hands are better than one. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I heard Ms. Patterson, but why don't we see what's happening with item 2 first, and then we'll address that very shortly. So why don't we call item 2 without objection?
File number 12007, hearing on the status of the April 4th, 2012 order of determination of Library Users Association against Supervisor Campos, responding late to an immediate disclosure request and redacting information from the Bernal Heights branch library mural related to documents inappropriately.
Thank you. So to refresh us, this item has been before the full task force, has been to the Compliance and Amendments Committee, was back to the full task force, was referred to this committee to ensure that Supervisor Campos has procedures in place to address public records requests, including immediate disclosure requests, so as not to delay such responses. Supervisor Campos's office requested a continuance 2 weeks ago because no one was available at the time. We subsequently sent email to all parties, including Supervisor Campos, asking for someone to be present today, and apparently someone is not present. So I think the first issue before the committee is whether to hear the matter at this time or continue it or take some other action. Why don't I open this initially to members of the committee, and then we'll hear from the complainant and members of the public in a moment. Any members of the committee have an initial view? How about Member Oka?
Mr. Chairman,
Can you pull the mic?
do we
There you go.
have, is the microphone on? There it is.
Great.
Do we have a reason for the supervisor's staff not being here?
Madam Clerk Administrator has heard nothing?
No, as the chair had stated, notice went out to the respondent, and I had not heard otherwise whether or not the respondent would be here, and they have not replied.
Okay.
So they didn't reply to the 2-week extension? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Usually if a respondent is not able to attend, they will send an email like his office did 2 weeks ago for your last meeting, but nothing was sent to our office saying that they would not be here.
Member David, thoughts?
What if we just pull this to the end of the agenda, give them a chance to show up this session, and if not, then take action?
I'm open to that. I don't want to make this a practice, but maybe we could put this off, go to item 3, call Supervisor Campos's office. Again, I don't want to make this an ongoing practice, and see if they can appear. They ought to have somebody in the building. The board is not on recess this week.
So at this point, we're just having discussion. We're not open for
Right.
public comment yet, so we're still talking this through, right?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Warfield, we're still discussing this. If you'd like to take a seat, we'll come back to you with public comment. Yeah, you'll have a chance to do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think Member Heinlein's suggestion makes the most sense to me, that we certainly hopefully someone from from Supervisor Campos' office is coming, but if not, I'm not in favor of what's it called?
Mr. Warfield, please take a
for-
seat. We'll give you a
delaying
chance
this
to comment.
again.
Please take a
And so
seat.
I think that Mr. Warfield
seat.
should be heard today. So hopefully we can get someone from Mr. Campos' office up here, from Supervisor Campos' office.
The fact that he didn't send any email confirming they're going to be here, and the fact that they're not here, maybe we shouldn't even bother doing that. Yeah, I'm still discussing this, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the call is underway. Why don't we take public
May I comment on that?
Yeah, this is on the question of how to proceed today, not on the substance. Go ahead.
This is a joke. We waited until the item came up last time and found out at the time, after staying the whole time, that Supervisor Campos just didn't have anybody. At least that time he sent a note to the administrator. He knew perfectly well that this was happening. He knew this had been postponed at his request. How far backwards are you going to bend in order to accommodate an already, if you like, convicted violator? I think this is a sad joke. It's a real imposition on the public, which expected a certain agenda sequence. It's broad daylight in the middle of a working day. It's just past 3. We're not having a meeting that starts after supper at 7. So I think it's outrageous that there is nobody here from the supervisor's office this time, after you bent over backwards to accommodate the supervisor last time, not to speak of our own inconvenience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hartz?
Barry Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government, and I have to echo Mr. Warfield. This is ridiculous. You know, they have no respect for you. They have no respect for the public. They don't feel they have any obligation to come here. It's impossible to hear it if they're not here. I would send it back to the full task force and simply ask them to find a violation for not sending a knowledgeable person. Rearranging the agenda, putting everyone else at an inconvenience and a disadvantage to favor one party is unacceptable. This happened the last time. This was originally referred to this committee in February, March, April, and here we are in May, and we're still running into this crap. Excuse my French, but that's what it is. Nothing but pure and simple. And we're 15 years into this thing, and we're talking about whether or not a Board of Supervisors member knows how to reply to a public records request. At what point are we going to stop giving them this benefit of the doubt where they're treated like they're novices that just got hired last week, or they're some sort of an intern, and say, oh, well, have Supervisor Campos come and tell us how he's going to correct his office's inability after 15 years to properly respond to a public records request and to not to redact the information, which he still, from my understanding, has withheld. No, don't reschedule this. Don't give them any benefit of the doubt. Just simply send it back to the full task force and ask that they find the additional violation of not sending a knowledgeable party, not only last time, but now this time. And very frankly, if you're going to ask for a continuance, you do it in such a frame of mind so that the other party doesn't come here and sit and waste their afternoon, because and not knowing full well that the other party has no intention of showing up. It's discourtesy to the public, it's discourtesy to the complainant, and it's a discourtesy to the task force.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Manetcho. I'm here on my own time as a private citizen. I was going to recommend leniency on Supervisor Campos. After all, he's a busy man running for higher elected office. You got to cut him some slack. But hearing Mr. Hartz, I fully concur. This subcommittee needs to send this thing back to the full task force with a recommendation from you on what you want the task force to do as a complete body. Campos has been supervisor for going on 7 years. He should know what the rules are by now. He should know about sunshine. After all, as an elected official who's required, as you are, to fill out Form 700s and to take your annual sunshine training, he has presumably taken that training at least 5 times, or 6, or 7. He should know what the rules are by now. And because he should know what the rules are, having certified as an elected official that he's taken that sunshine annual training, you should send this back to the full task force with a recommendation to hold him in contempt. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Mr. Grossman?
Knowing of your interest to have these meetings as short as possible, you probably are going to waste about 15 minutes on whether to just put this to the other end of the agenda. The order of determination, it looks to me, was entered over a year ago. And just reached the stage where you're trying to find out if there's compliance. So with all due respect to Supervisor Campos, who I do respect in other matters, I don't see the point of deferring it any further. And the other problem is the person who's going to show up from his office is going to say, that all happened before my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. At this time, Madam Clerk Administrator, do we have some new information?
Yes, I did contact Supervisor Campos' office, and it looks like no one will be in attendance today.
Thank you. Well,
I just wanted to say, Mr. Hartz, we appreciate all your experience and expertise in guiding this commission and everything that you do for the public, but this is the second time you've used inappropriate language. So please try and, there are ladies present. Please try and control that in future. Thank you.
I would just say this puts us in a difficult position. This has already been to the task force on the merits. It's already been heard in compliance. We're only here on this issue to ensure that Supervisor Campos has procedures in place to respond on a timely basis to requests. That's our only reason for hearing this. And if Supervisor Campos or his representative can't be here, that's a problem. So I'm thinking about how to proceed.
I don't think there's any difficulty here. I think we have to send it back and send a message. Having heard the history on this, I'm now Sure. I'm now not in favor of continuing this or moving it back in the agenda. I think we should do exactly as we've heard from, members of the public.
Bruce, do you have a...
Yes.
Member open?
We can actually hear this without the supervisor's staff or himself here. So I would recommend we do that.
Okay. Member David?
Yeah, so procedurally, I guess I have a question that I'm not, that is running around my mind. It seems to me that by Supervisor Campos not giving proper notice that he was not going to be here, that in and of itself could potentially be a sunshine ordinance issue. And so my question is that, as Chair Pilpel said, we are here to basically make sure that Supervisor Campos fulfilled the last sunshine ordinance. I'm not sure that it's an appropriate role of our body of this subcommittee to then say that we are referring this back to the whole committee because of a sunshine violation. I'm really kind of stuck. I could really use some advice from, if there was a city attorney here on kind of what is the appropriate role of this subcommittee on this particular matter?
Just thinking through this, and, we will, my inclination at this point is to hear from Mr. Warfield, hear if there are any further facts and evidence about the supervisor's procedures. I'm leaning toward referring this matter back to the full task force with the option for the task force to take further action, and at the same time sending, as they like to say, a strongly worded letter to Supervisor Campos indicating that it's going to be back before the full task force, and he would strongly consider appearing either there or committing to being here or sending a representative here. We have not ultimately gotten to this question of what procedures his office has, and I want very much to ensure that that is in place. And I'm not sure what other action we could take that would help motivate or compel that, but that's where I'm currently leaning. It's not a great solution, but we don't have really great solutions right now.
There's nothing stopping us from hearing from Mr. Warfield, is there?
No, there is not, and we should, and we will. So with all of that, why don't we go into hearing mode and ask Mr. Warfield, the complainant, to present facts and evidence up to 5 minutes, noting again that we've already found a violation. So if you could speak most specifically to Supervisor Campos's action timeliness and what procedural changes you think have happened or should happen. Mr. Warfield.
If you could let me know when there's a minute left, I'd appreciate it. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I sent a letter to the full task force, and certainly including this body, in which I said that I had little expectation of justice from this committee. It's the May 9th, 2013 letter, page 14 of your agenda. With respect to, and I hope you've all read it, with respect to what's happening here, the agenda itself is not adequate to why it's here. As we wrote in our previous letter for the previous meeting at which this was supposed to be taken up on April 22nd, your packet, page 20, our page 5, the Compliance and Amendments Committee said they wanted the following action taken: refer the matter to the task force with a recommendation that it be forwarded to the Ethics Commission and the Education Outreach and Training Committee to develop procedures regarding fulfilling public records requests. That does not restrict it in the way that the chair has indicated, and any restriction on what you take up here that's not supported specifically by the agenda is something that favors the violator. This body needs to look at larger issues and the larger history, which represents a pattern of violation for the purpose of evading open government. In this business, Supervisor Campos came to the Library Commission in 2009 and supported maintaining at least the front of the Bernal mural, which is on 3 sides of the Bernal Heights Branch Library. He recommended to keep at least the front and, if not all of it, then have some kind of a process to add to the existing mural. Since that time, he totally reversed himself. If you are serious about understanding what happened, which is the only way that you'll be able to make any recommendations. You need to have, essentially, like a doctor does, a good diagnosis. You can't say, let's put calamine lotion on this pimple, and oh, here's another pimple, and another pimple, and another pimple. You need to step back and say, there's a rash here, and do the necessary tests to find out if it's secondary syphilis. Because applying calamine lotion to this pimple and that pimple isn't going to do it. You need to think about and step back and think about, if necessary, what's going on. So Supervisor Campos completely reversed his position, and you should ask him why. What made him issue a joint statement with the mayor recommending to the Bernal folks that they go along with this so-called process, all of which was essentially an evasion of all of the sunshine requirements? They were able to Supervisor Campos selected one person who was supposedly the mediator. That person selected all 12 members of a committee, and they met essentially in secret with no agendas, no minutes, no recordings, and no public announcements. How many times has the supervisor come up with a joint statement from the mayor? Why did this supposedly independent group have meetings in the mayor's office? Why were there so many emails to Supervisor Campos if this was such an independent neighborhood committee? There were hundreds of pages, more than 300, ultimately supplied. The emails indicated other evasions, people not being invited to certain meetings, people blindsided with last-minute changes in the wording of a group statement, admonitions not to discuss things via email. And why did it take 4 immediate disclosure requests, the first one and 3 follow-up ones spaced considerably apart, to ultimately get any response from Supervisor Campos? You should consider the broader picture and what other steps can be taken to, and I certainly have some suggestions, generally speaking, and in this case in particular, but your loaded question, what's he doing? Probably nothing, and running for the next office and hoping he can push the can down the field till he's elected. Thank you.
Thank you, and we may have questions in a bit. Are there any other parties to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none. Still no one from Supervisor Campos' office. Are there any other parties to present facts and evidence in support of the city or the respondent? Seeing none, we're back to the task force for discussion and questions. Are there any questions?
I have a question for Mr. Warfield.
Mr. Warfield?
Have you received any so I feel like I know we've discussed this case before. Have you received any additional documents from Supervisor Campos' office with the redactions being removed in a manner that you found satisfactory?
I received documents as ordered in the order of determination, but it was not in 5 days, it was in 23 business days. In other words, more than a month after he was sent an order of determination, which itself was more than 2 months after the hearing. There was no evidence, as far as I'm concerned, of complying with the letter of that order in terms of timeliness, nor with the hearing, which had happened 2 months earlier, and he knew full well what was coming. It was just a matter of paperwork. Then he sent us a completely one massive mass of more than 300 pages in a completely different sequence from the first set, which had come also in a mishmash order, but as 6 separate mailings, because supposedly there was too much pressure on memory. Ultimately, presumably, you were at the hearing, I believe, when he said, oh, sure, he could just take the unredacted original, take the sendings that were originally sent but unredacted and do that. And only after, I believe my recollection is that he didn't do anything after that meeting until we sent an email saying, what's up? And at that point, we got a bunch of stuff. Fortunately for him, by that time, the scam of the destruction of the Bernal mural and the replacement of it were well underway.
Further questions and discussion from the task force? Committee members? Okay. I'm prepared to make a motion soon, but let's, I guess let's offer complainant one last opportunity. Mr. Warfield, do you have anything further? One moment. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Peter Warfield, Library Users Association, Executive Director. If you could let me know when I have 30 seconds, I'd appreciate it. The silence from Supervisor Campos's office may not be deafening, but it's very loud. He's playing you and us and the public for suckers. His lack of presence here, his having delayed it as long as he has enabled him to not have to face any of the music that comes as a consequence of his bad actions, and particularly at the time that I think may be sensitive for him with respect to an election that I believe he is understood to be expecting will take place in November. As I said, there were a number of questions that could and should be asked of Supervisor Campos by the full task force and or this body. I've already raised some of those questions. With respect to compliance, certainly the task force's finding more than a year ago in April 2012, I think, did get eventually the documents unredacted, but there is a whole range of things that I think you could do in this case and in others. For example, you could require a posting of a kind of public Bill of Rights at every office that deals with the public, particularly the office of a violator. You could also have a corollary, which is what is a city employee's duties with respect to information requests posted in the office of any place that deals with the public. Agendas and minutes ought also to have a good record for the department in question of what their recent violations might have been, what the law requires, what the public can do, and again, a public Bill of Rights and city employee duties with respect to sunshine. I think that would help with sunshine.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I have 2 minutes and 21 seconds I've talked. That would help with sunshine, and also that would help sunshine with the use of further sunshine. And I have a variety of other things that I think this body could do, but I'll leave it at that for now. And I appreciate your taking the strongest possible steps against what, as far as I'm concerned, is a very nasty attempt to hide a very bad action. Thank you.
Thanks. And Mr. Warfield, if you would be able to put in writing sometime those specific thoughts, I, for one, would be very interested in reading those. So the matter is back with the task force for a motion. I'm looking to either make or entertain a motion to refer this matter back to the full task force and send that strongly worded letter to Supervisor Campos outlining what we're looking for and expressing great concern that he hasn't been here or sent a representative to these last two meetings. So
I guess my only question between what you're what you're suggesting is, I think at the very least, a strongly worded letter is called for. I guess my question is that what is the value of sending an already litigated case back to the full task force as opposed to, because it's probably going to get referred right back to us from the whole task force.
Which it may, but the full task force would have other options, could choose based on the record to refer the matter to the Ethics Commission, to send a letter to the full Board of Supervisors, to refer the matter to the DA, to the AG, to any number of other places. It gives the task force more jurisdiction for how to handle the matter, and depending on the response or lack of a response from Supervisor Campos in the next couple of weeks, the task force would have those options. So that's my thinking.
Mr.
Member Oka?
Chairman, I would agree totally with that. In the body of the strongly worded letter, I would recommend having a definite deadline by which the supervisor must respond. Otherwise, it means nothing.
Fair point. And I'm thinking sometime in the 10 days before the next full task force meeting. So probably the Friday before Memorial Day,
Yes.
which
Would
I think
also
is
be
a
worth-
week from this Friday.
Would also be worth us recommending to the full task force to put in a violation for 6722 for not sending a knowledgeable person,
21E.
21E,
Yeah,
or just let them
I think
determine
I think that's a bit premature. We could decide that at the full task force, and I'm not sure if 21E plays into this. It gets complicated when it's not adjudication of the matter on the merits, I would say. I'm not saying that we can't, but the whole point of the letter is to motivate some response that has not yet been forthcoming. So
Is there a motion on the floor?
that not yet. Would you like to make that motion?
Sure. So, motion. I'd like to make a motion to refer this case back to the full task force.
And send the letter?
Oh, yes, excuse me. I apologize. And send a letter to Supervisor Campos as was
Outlined,
Yeah, as
okay.
outlined by Chair Powell.
And
Second.
I will copy that letter to all members of the task
Yes.
force and complainant Warfield. Okay, so that's the motion to refer the matter to the full task force and send the discussed letter. That's the motion. So we've already heard from Mr. Warfield, so now we'll take public comment from others. And do you want to limit this to 3 or 3 minutes? Okay. Mr. Monaco?
So, Chair Pilpel, I support this motion to refer it back to the full task force. I do have some concerns about Member David's understanding of what the function of this body is. My understanding is this body is well within its rights to refer matters whenever it chooses back to the full task force. If you find that a sunshine violator is still not in compliance, you have an ethical duty to refer it back to the full task force and let them decide what they want to do with this matter. So to suggest only doing a letter and maybe not referring it back to the full task force would be shirking your duties on this committee, Mr. David.
No.
Yes.
Made the motion, yeah. I think he missed
Mr. Hartz?
Members of the committee, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government, and I would like it if Ms. Osbury would tell me when I have 1 minute left. First, I want to say, with due respect to Member Highland, this is the Constitution of the United States. It says that I can use whatever words I want. The word I used in particular, the FCC doesn't mind it being done on broadcast television. It's not a word that is something most adults have not heard. And why you felt it necessary to make a point of that, I don't know, but you have the right to do that. But I have a right to say something back in response. Very frankly, you're just abdicating your duty. You have a responsibility to send this back to the task force with some sort of a recommendation, not just say, well, we couldn't handle it, you take care of it. Twice now they have not shown up. I don't see any indication in the future that they intend to show up, and you're simply sending it back to the task force and saying, well, we couldn't do anything about it, your problem. That's exactly how it's going to come across, and very frankly, if I were a city employee at this point, I wouldn't come to any of these meetings. And it's particularly galling when we get announcements from your office saying we are required to attend, we do attend, and they don't. So what is this? It's a double standard, so we have to come, we're expected to come, we do come, and they can just do nothing. Not come, not respond, not even, in this case, send a letter saying they're not coming. And you find that apparently totally acceptable. You know, the bottom line is the complainant has already found the respondent in violation by the full task force. Why they're expected to come here and now make a case as to what changes. How is Mr. Warfield supposed to know if they've made any changes at all, what those changes were, whether they were sufficient, and based on that, what he expects should be done in addition? He has no information. So it's basically asked backwards. It's saying, okay, we're going to have the complainant say what they think should be done, and then we're going to have the respondent say what they did to answer their own violation. It ought to be the other way around, where the respondent responds to the complaint, says, here's what we've done, and then the complainant says, I think that's very good progress, but I think these additional things need to be done. In other words, you just put the whole burden on the complainant and make this even more onerous. But again, sending it back to the task force with nothing but we couldn't handle it, sure problem now, is abdication of your duty. I don't care how you want to take my opinion of that. It bottom line is.
Thank you. Further public comment?
It's clear that you have to make a recommendation back to the task force, whether there's been either compliance or whatever the order required. And with that recommendation, you either say the order's been complied with or it hasn't. And generally, there's another recommendation along with it, which such as it should be referred to the Ethics Commission for enforcement or whatever. They could do that, although it becomes a very touchy thing with ethics as to whether what the actual issue is, since this is no longer a complaint. It's enforcement of an order. But my suggestion is that the recommendation be that it be enforced, and secondly, that if it is not complied with within 10 days or some period, that it constitutes a violation of Section 6734, which says the willful failure of any elected official, which Mr. Campos clearly is, to discharge any duties imposed by the Sunshine Ordinance, which he clearly has had imposed on him, shall be deemed official misconduct. Official misconduct, I don't have it with me, under the city charter, I think it's Article 15, and if Mr. Threet were here, I'm sure he could fill you all in. If there's a finding of official misconduct by any other commission of the city or body, agency, policy body, that finding is the same as if the mayor had made such a finding and brought somebody up for a hearing, which was done, as you know, just recently. So I think that would have the most impact on the supervisor, because he's no longer going to deal with the Ethics Commission, which is now down to 4 members, or a task force, actually, which has only 9 now, but rather he's going to have to deal with the possibility that he will be up on official misconduct. Anyway, again, if Mr. Threet were here, I'm sure he could spell that out for you, and maybe at some point he will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. On the motion to refer to the full task force, and let me just be clear, this is not with a specific recommendation, but it's a referral to the full task force, and I will write a letter that I'm sure everyone will be unhappy with. I can pretty much guarantee that. But we will send that in the next couple of days then. So let's take a roll call vote on that.
Member Oka?
Aye.
Oka, aye. Member Highland?
No.
Highland, no. Member David?
Aye.
David, aye. And Chair Pilpel?
Aye.
You have 3 ayes.
Highland, do you want to explain your vote? It's up to you.
I think I kind of agree with Mr. Grossman. I think something
Not strong enough?
stronger should be put in there, and I think the full task force can dismantle that and decide to ignore it and put another recommendation at that point. But I think this has gone on long enough that just a simple referral back is a disservice.
I just received a communication that Supervisor Campos's office is on their way up right now.
Well, then someone can explain to them later what just happened. Meanwhile,
You don't have to answer that.
I think we're pretty well done with item 2. How about we call item 3?
Item number 3, file number 12013, hearing on the status of November 7, 2012, order of determination of William Clark against Howard Lazar, Arts Commission, for allegedly not providing documents of expenses charged to the Street Artist Program, fiscal year 2010-2011.
Thank you. So we heard from Ms. Patterson. Do you want to remind us again what you're requesting, and then we'll decide how to deal with this?
Sure, thank you. I respectfully request a continuance. When we last heard this agenda item, I had basically promised that Howard Lazar would be here because obviously this is to benefit of his program. He has been out sick. He was out sick last week and is out sick again today, and I think it's really important that he be here for this. And so I asked that we reschedule so that he have another opportunity to sit in on this. And again, we apologize for the inconvenience, but yeah.
Okay, and this request was not communicated to us beforehand, and we got nothing from the Arts Commission
I
before
did
this
send
meeting.
an email earlier this afternoon to Andrea,
Okay.
letting her know that he was ill and seeing if there was a possibility to reschedule.
Okay, but we also got nothing of substance in the past week, only the request today for the continuance.
No, I did not submit anything. I
Okay.
mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think we provided everything that we could provide in the previous hearing, so there was nothing else to add.
Okay, well, we may get back to that. Mr. Clark?
Yes,
how
I'd
do
like
you-
to object to a continuance right now, only because I do have some suggestions that as a result of the last hearing, because it wasn't left off that the Art Commission thinks that they've given you everything. They were instructed to sit down with me and come up with some suggestions that I have that should be included in these sunshine ordinance requests and these consultations with the city attorney. So I would like to have an opportunity to present to you a few things, and then if she would like it continued to next month, she could give that information to Howard, and then he could respond to what I'm suggesting. And because basically, if you're familiar with the information on page 61, those are the documents, which is nothing. We get nothing. And what I would like to do is in those records, I would like to have kept. One, the date a public information or record request was received, the name of the person making that request. If it was a Sunshine Ordinance complaint, I would like the number of the Sunshine Ordinance complaint in that. I would like to know what document or information was requested by the public. If the city attorney is asked for some counsel, I would like in that record that there be some indication of what the counseling, what was necessary for the Arts Commission to have the city attorney get their advice. I would like the final outcome and the advice that was given by the city attorney. I would like the time that of counsel, 15 minutes, a half an hour, and I would like the deputy city attorney's name who did the advising. So basically, I would like that anytime there's a sunshine request that and counseling with the city attorney, since we're paying for this time, and all this information is public information under the Sunshine Ordinance, I would like this information to be included in any of those, in that particular record. So I would like to present that to you, and if she wants to give it to Howard and he can go over my suggestions and then come back next month and we can maybe finalize this, I would be satisfied with that, but I would like the opportunity to give that to them.
Okay, and I'm leaning towards that. Can you just give me a second here?
Sure.
I see the presence of Supervisor Campos's office. We're going to finish dealing with this item related to the Arts Commission, and then we'll inform Supervisor Campos's folks what just went down. With respect to this matter, I appreciate Mr. Clark's comments and suggestions. You haven't put that in writing, what you just explained, but that was a pretty good summary, and I don't know if Ms. Patterson was taking notes.
I was going to do it here, and I didn't get any notice of this request to be for continuance either.
Nor did we until right here, so we're just dealing with stuff. So, so how about this? If Mr. Clark, if you could put in writing the suggestions that you just made for the type of documentation that you're looking for. Okay. I can't guarantee that they're going to give you all of those things, but I pretty well can guarantee that they'll take a look at it and think about it, because we're going to ask them to do that.
Right.
So if we can do that, noting, what did I want to note on this? When this was first adopted, just a couple of quick things. This was first adopted as an order back in November of 2012 by a 5-3 vote, which at the time was sufficient to carry a substantive action under our current rules. Right. That would not, but notwithstanding, we're going to seek to enforce the order that the task force made at the time. What I would like, if you can hang out for a sec, Ms. Patterson. And I think we all hope that Mr. Lazar is better and well, because that helps everyone, and his not being here doesn't help all of us. If you would agree to take a look at the forthcoming writing from Mr. Clark, share that with Mr. Lazar, see what you can address, if it's everything, if it's nothing, if it's some of those things, and communicate that in writing to the task force with a copy to the clerks, or Mr. Clark?
Sure.
A clerk, any clerk, all the clerks. And I also want to remember my suggestion from back at the full task force, the city attorney chart. There still, I believe, are other fields that aren't being produced here. So if you can make another run at getting this report rerun with I think it's the description field, because I remember, Mr. Clark, there was discussion at the full task force about the level of detail and how many fields are captured in this particular query that may not address all of Mr. Clark's concerns, but it may address some of them, and I wanted to get as detailed an accounting as can exist from the city attorney relative to the time that they spend for you on the Street Artist Program.
I'll just reiterate that I did ask the city attorney's office for further detail in their reporting and was told that it did not exist. So I just want to make it clear that that document is under the purview and is the responsibility of the city attorney's office, and I will ask. But I do expect that this body does not hold me accountable for an inability to produce said document.
Understood, but if you can make reference to the description field, and if you can communicate with them in writing or by email and get a response back, and if that too can be provided to the task force with a copy to Mr. Clark, that would complete the record, so then we can say either we tried and they didn't have it, or we tried and they won't. Whatever the answer is, that we've got that in the record, and then we'll do with it what we will. So that's where I'm headed with this. Mr. Clark, does this concept work for you for the moment?
Yeah, basically, I just want to make it clear that we're talking about future records. So,
well, we're talking about two things. We're talking about the past in terms of the level of detail for the records for fiscal 10-11, which was the subject of this particular order, and then you're talking about
and then
going
I was instructed to come here to meet with Howard or the Arts Commission to try and come up with some things that we think the minimum things that we think should be included in records which relate to the sunshine relate to the sunshine ordinance and brownout requests that were listed in that packet, that there should be some more information available to the public. And it's true that they may not have any more records on this at this particular time, and I don't expect them to get any more records, but that's why I'm requesting this information in the future be included every time the Art Commission meets with the city attorney regarding a sunshine request or a Brown Act request, that this information be kept record and on file so the public could be made aware of what transpires.
So if you're going to agree to put that in writing to Ms. Patterson and Mr. Lazar with a copy to the task force,
sure,
and we'll see their response.
That's fine. That's all. That's fine. That's fine. With
the next meeting or a future meeting when we get, and if we can ask Ms. Patterson to consider meeting either herself, Mr. Lazar, whoever from the Arts Commission with you, if they deem that productive.
I know that, but just for your information, I don't want to meet with them.
And they may not want to meet as well.
And they may not want to meet with me. I'd rather meet with you, and they can communicate to me through email if they have what their suggestions are.
Trying to work things out here.
No, I appreciate that.
That's cool. So if that works for you, Ms. Patterson, this concept works for you?
Given the display, the behavior at the last meeting, I would prefer not to meet alone with them as well.
It sounds like there's not going to be a meeting, but if this happens,
I just want to make that clear that I'd prefer to do it with witnesses.
That's fine. If they're.
I just want to respond to that, have a minute to respond to that. I don't mind her asking, first of all, nothing happened, but I don't mind her asking for police accompanying to meet the body, but I think she should wait until after you take a vote on the matter, and then give her, if she feels uncomfortable leaving the building because I'm here, give her the police that she wants, even though nothing's going to happen.
Mr. Clark, people feel however they feel.
I just think it's not right to bring that into this committee before the vote is taken. That can make you.
All I'm trying to figure out is how to move forward here on this.
I appreciate that.
And it sounds like there's not going to be a meeting, but there'll be an exchange of email or documents.
Absolutely. But I just want to say that I don't appreciate being accused of doing something. For your information, I I was detained by the police last week after she left 15 minutes, and I was lectured by the police about my irrationality. And all I'm saying is that if she wants to be the police to take her out, if she wants to request that from this task force or the full task force, I would appreciate if she would do it after you took the vote, because I don't want it to seem like it could influence your vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's cool, and we're going to be hearing from the police in a bit, too. So, everybody gets dealt with here. No problem. All right, so Ms. Patterson is good with that. Members, do we have a direction to proceed in? I don't think we need a letter. I think there's some understanding. So is a motion to continue to the call of the chair with the understandings that we've just discussed, and then we'll take public comment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And so that's to continue to the call of the chair with the exchange of documents and information, copies to the task force, and back and forth between the parties so they can try to work out their differences as best as possible. And if there are things that we need to further resolve, we'll do that at a future meeting. So public comment on that motion.
About a year ago, on May 17, 2012, the Rules Committee failed to act on nominations by 3 organizations of their proposed members to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. Those nominations were held to the call of the chair. A year has passed, and the chair never called. You don't write, you don't call, you don't do anything. So I think it's a mistake to do anything at the call of the chair. And since the task force is now down to 9 people after a year, I think it's incumbent on if you're serious about what you're doing, which I assume you are, that you set a date certain, either for the action that is required or requested and agreed to, or that you set it for the next meeting, which hopefully will be within 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to comment briefly, we're going to talk later about changing the regular meeting date, but it is certainly my intention to schedule this as soon as possible, giving the parties time to work things out. Mr. Hartz, go ahead.
I would appreciate if the administrator can let me know when I have 1 minute. Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I will tell you from my own experience, the Arts Commission and all of its staff are serial violators of this ordinance. And very frankly, if they can't shut you up, what they try to do is make a prima facie case that you're this unreasonable person by making false claims about them being afraid. I think many of you may have heard what Jewel Gomez, the president of the Library Commission, tried to do to me. I made a public comment, a perfectly legitimate one, which was included in my case. She was later recorded, and it was posted on the public website of the San Francisco Public Library, saying she knew 12 people who could effing bury me, that she wanted to garrote me with the cord, and then she went 2 days later and filed a police report against me saying she was afraid that I had threatened her. So what they try to do is when they can't win on the merits, is establish a pattern of behavior where they can come in and say things like this. And I agree with Mr. Clark. Allowing her to make these comments immediately before the vote is totally unacceptable. I mean, who wouldn't listen to that comment and potentially be prejudiced by a city official or a city employee coming here and saying these people did unreasonable things, and these claims are nothing but unsubstantiated statements? It's unacceptable, and it's unacceptable to allow it to happen. And basically, it is just another trick. The last time we had a meeting here, I told you about Commissioner Cass Smith of the Arts Commission calling Mr. Warfield horrible things, telling him he was going to use his position to keep Mr. Warfield from participating in public meetings. I mean, basically, they have this idea that the law does not apply to them. Thank you. And basically, again, this behavior is unacceptable. Mr. Lazar himself held a meeting where he removed somebody's permit, and what he did is he went to the city attorney's office and they filed a stay-away order against the person so they couldn't come to the meeting where their hearing was being held. And they say, oh, well, she didn't come. She mustn't care. So they've got a lot of tricks up their sleeve. And I have no belief at all that they act in any way, shape, manner, form in good faith. They're sneaky, they intend to be sneaky, and they will continue to be sneaky.
Is there further public comment? Mr. Warfield.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association. We are not a party to this case, but I think that the display that you've just seen is very ugly. We have from the Arts Commission, and at certain times others, basically threats and slanders or implied slanders. The Arts Commission, I believe it was, on a different case than the one brought to you here on Library Users Association account, stated as the reason why they didn't want to reveal what the task force ultimately unanimously voted had to be revealed about the contact information of people on speaker cards. It's my recollection that they made some very ugly suggestions about why they anticipated statements that they expected bad things to happen, which I won't quote exactly, if they were to reveal the information. It was another smear. And that's one of the things that I think the task force, if it wants to be taken seriously by anybody, and if it wants to dispense any kind of justice, needs to deal with, and that is lies and smears or slanders. And if you don't do anything actively about it, you're setting up people to come in here for low blows and with no consequence whatsoever to the people giving those out. And I think you do need to take action with respect to such things in this case, and keep it in mind as something in a general way, because it's very, very low blow, and it's disheartening, it's humiliating, it's a whole range of ugly things for people who are accused or impliedly accused of wrongdoing. And I think you need to be the opposite of silent with respect to such kind of behavior. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Mr. Monette Shaw.
I would like to add my voice that to waltz in here and make false allegations against the clerks is inexcusable. Filing false police reports, I believe, is a crime. And for sunshine advocates, open government advocates who are trying to keep an eye on the public dime, to be accused wrongly in a public meeting like this is really shameful. Shameful behavior. And this body should not tolerate it.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. On the motion, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, can we take this motion without objection? Hold on, we haven't concluded the matter yet. So we can take this without objection? All right, so then without objection, the motion is passed. And thank you. We look forward to seeing what transpires. And thank you.
I'm just letting you know I'm leaving. Let me leave first.
Yeah. Can you guys organize your things? So, yeah, okay. Time and space. Thank you. Okay, so we're done with item 3. We're going to go back to item 2 for a moment. If we can have the representative from Supervisor Campos's office, we're not going to, if you want to come up, we're not going to go through this again at great length. We took 40 minutes to talk about how to proceed and ultimately decided that we're referring the matter back to the full task force. I'm to write a letter to your office noting that we attempted to hold a hearing 2 weeks ago. That didn't happen. You asked for a continuance. You did not appear initially today, and we're referring it back to the full task force and explaining what it is that we're seeking. Ultimately, we want to ensure that you have procedures in place to timely respond to public records requests. So that'll be forthcoming, and we're now more encouraged to see that you're here, but would have been better to have seen you an hour ago, and we would very much appreciate a timely response to that correspondence.
I just have one question for you guys. So there was a little bit of confusion about whether you guys actually sent an email asking for a continuance for today, because according to our clerk, we did not receive one. So I just want to give you guys an opportunity to say whether, if there's an internal miscommunication between the clerks or at the clerk's office, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Sure. So my name is Stephanie Ashley, and I've been here before on this matter, and I apologize for the misunderstanding. After I testified, it was made clear that it was preferable for the supervisor himself to be here, and I now handle the supervisor's schedule. I did not send an email. However, I thought that our office had called and requested a continuance. I know now that it always needs to be an email so that we have documentation of that. And when I learned that this was still on the agenda, I apologize. We ran up here as quickly as we can. So that there was no email sent. It was a phone call.
Okay. Thank you. And this also reminds us about our procedures and documentation, and I'll address that later. But I think we're good for the moment. Look forward to the letter. We look forward to your response. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
All right. Done with items 2 and 3. Let's do item 4. Madam Clerk Administrator.
Item number 4, file number 12018, hearing on the status of December 5th, 2012 order of determination of Ray Harsh Jr. against Greg Surge, Chief of Police, for allegedly responding to an immediate disclosure request late, incompletely, and unlawfully.
Okay. So on this matter, this is its first appearance here at the Education Outreach and Training Committee. This was heard at the full task force in December, and at that time we issued an order on a 7-2 vote to find violations. That's in the packet on page 87, 88. As I recall, this turned on 2 issues. One was the timeliness, that the response from the department was not timely, and to the larger point that there did not appear to be a general email address for public records requests, and the department either didn't have clear procedures for how to handle requests or wasn't following those procedures, and then it was not obvious to a member of the public how they should go about filing a public records request, and there was some dispute about those issues. So with that, why don't we hear from the complainant, Mr. Hartz, as to how this was from Mr. Hartz. Go ahead.
Members of the Education Outreach and Training Committee, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Over the last 5 years, this is the 7th order of determination that I have gotten in regard to the San Francisco Police Department and or the Police Commission, not one of which has resulted in any change whatsoever to any of the policies. In fact, you can go back and find them still in violation of the same cases. That being said, my case is going to be short. It is on page 112, and it is a quote from Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I will not help you to pretend that I have a chance. I will not help you to preserve an appearance of righteousness where rights are not recognized. I will not help you to preserve an appearance of rationality by entering a debate in which a gun is the final argument. I will not help you to pretend that you are administering justice.
Okay. That was covered in your email on page 112 of our packet. I'm not sure that it addressed what we need to hear, but that's okay. Are there any other parties to present facts and evidence in support of the complainant? Seeing none. City responds. And if you could just tell us who you are, because I'm not sure we've seen you before.
Sure. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Lieutenant Raj Vaswani. I'm the commanding officer of Legal Division at the San Francisco Police Department.
Great. Did you have a statement? Because I certainly have questions, but go ahead.
I do. What I have is the decision for the order of determinations, only the 67.25, which was the response time to Mr. Hartz's inquiry. I don't have the other as an order of determination regarding the department's website or presence for the public for getting public information.
Okay, so...
But I can speak on that topic also.
Okay, so why don't we do that in Q&A? Okay. But I want to give you your 5 minutes.
Okay, so the San Francisco Police Department responded to Mr. Hartz's request 1 day late, and approximately 6 hours after Sergeant Goss had received the email, 6 hours after he opened the email. And I did have a meeting with the deputy chief about this. We met with our media division, which also gets a bulk of public record requests specifically from the media. And sometimes we do get requests relation to certain crimes that are happening, investigations. They get referred to the media division, and information's also responded through that unit. So they met with the deputy chief. Maureen Confrey, who does our general PRAs at Legal, she was there. We discussed the procedure itself, and we last year handled over 350, and we have not had a lot of complaints. It's unfortunate that Mr. Hart's complaint was late, and we do apologize and we acknowledge that.
Okay.
And just one more thing, as far as the complaints, we do have a form that is used at Legal. All of our district stations, when they do receive a call from the public regarding information or documents that the department holds, they refer them to Legal. And currently, we have somebody who responds to that. We also have Sergeant Goss, who's the backup for public records requests. And I also make sure that one of the things we did do is I wanted to make sure if one of our members is not there that day, that they update their email and make sure that there's some forwarding information. I do that with my own personal email, but I wanted to make sure that even if they're taking 1 day off or 2 days off, that there's some direction for the public on where to go. And so that's one of the changes that I recommended within our office, and it's a standard protocol. It's not anything that required any type of big change on our part.
Because if you're not telling the public where to go, then you're telling the public where to go.
Well,
anyway,
okay.
Sort of a joke. Okay. Did you have anything further on your statement? So we'll have questions in a moment.
I do not.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other parties to present facts and evidence in support of the city? No? Okay. So now we're with the task force for discussion and questions. Committee members, any questions, or shall I go ahead? Okay. So, Lieutenant, what I recall again from this case is that there was no, Sergeant Goss made his presentation. It appeared that there was no general email address for police department public records, and we note that other city departments, particularly large departments that have a number of people that handle public records requests, have a general email box. So something like sfpd.records@sfgov. Is that not something that you have? Is that something that you could set up?
Okay, so my opinion, and I relayed this with the chief, I would rather have specific people accountable for public records information. The problem with having a general email, because some of the district stations have them also, is you don't know what action's being taken, who looked at it. If it's a general email and there's 3 or 4 people that, for example, have that duty, I don't know if media relations is already handling that same public records request, or it's being handled in our office.
So let's say that media inquiries are handled through whoever's doing media these days, the people that I see quoted in the paper, Sergeant Chai and Andrejchek and the rest of the gang. If they're handling media inquiries, then we're just down to public records requests. I assume that subpoenas and other legal matters are handled through somebody in your unit.
Yes.
But if it's just a request from a member of the public, either to get a police report or to get information on overtime, or I don't know how often people go out to the gun range, whatever it is that people are asking for, if they're not with the media and it's not a legal subpoena or something, who do they go to now? What is there a place on the website that explains how to get access to public records? What does someone do?
There is a link on the website for 99% of our requests are for police reports.
Okay.
Because when officers go out, when they take the police reports, we do have members of the public that want their own police reports, or they're a party to a police report. They contact the records division. If the records division cannot release the report, if it's flagged for some reason, et cetera, they refer them to the legal division, and we will analyze that specific case and see if it's active, not active, if it endangers any type of investigation, or if it's a protected type of police report, such as a sexual assault or a juvenile type police report.
And is that explained on the website?
It is not explained on the website. No.
Is that something that you could look at improving?
Well, that feedback is given to the person that's requesting that cannot.
Is that general explanation about what type of information is available and what type of information is not available, can that be memorialized and put on the website so that people have some better understanding of what is and isn't?
We currently don't have a PRA unit, so it's generic information that comes into legal, and we analyze it as it comes in, what needs to be released and what doesn't.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to do here is to get you to think a little less as a police officer and a little more as an average person who's just either trying to get a police report and doesn't know your procedures and command structure or any of that, or is doing an article about how much overtime has been racked up or how the 14B program works or whatever the heck they're working on, right? And they just want some public records, and they go to the website and there's not much there, and what's there points them to different offices. How can we fix that so that there's some better clarity there and some clear procedures so that whether it's a district station, so that you can figure out how to deal with it and we can get the person the information they're entitled to. If they're entitled to it, we want to give it to them. If they're not, we want to tell them that they're not entitled to it and here's why. How can we make that happen better?
Right now, if a member of the public, if they called our police department, they would be referred to legal. It is not on the website, so that's something that we can look into. If we revamp our website, there's a couple of things we could do in the future, but right now, it is not, because other than Mr. Hart's, we have not had a problem with people getting information for what they're seeking. We have members of everything from law firms to just general community members that call us all the time, and they are all referred to legal unless it's just a specific general police report.
Okay, so I did hear you say we can look at that and we can try to do some more there. I would encourage you to look at other department websites and see what's intuitive and what's not intuitive, where it says about us or public records. You know, as I've suggested, there are departments, larger departments that have a dedicated person or a general email box, smaller departments that have people assigned to this function. You know, people have tried to figure this out, and my past experience with the police department is that it is complicated and confusing, and there's a lot of finger pointing between field units and 850 Bryant and back to various offices. You call the chief's office, they say call legal, you call somebody there, they're not there, they refer you to somebody else. I'm recalling like 15, 20 years ago, there was some guy named Ed, who you'll probably remember, who was the guy, and I suspect he's now been replaced by Maureen. Is that about right?
And Maureen is not the only person handling them.
Okay,
So
but she's like the civilian point person on this stuff?
It's media and legal, general.
But within legal, right, because if you're a member of the public, you're not dealing with media. I suspect if I called the media unit, they're going to say, if you're not with KGO, I don't talk to you. You got to go call the chief's office or call somebody else. And then again, we're back with the finger pointing. It's not easy. I'm trying to emphasize here, it's not easy for a member of the public to just get basic information about the police. You would think that it would be. There are a lot of police. They've got lots of information, but you can't get it. It's very hard.
And I understand that, and it's in our interest to be transparent and to have open access to the public. That's not, since I have been there, any PRA we get from the chief's office, media, from the district stations, I have not had a complaint of a PRA not getting processed on time.
Okay. Well, here it is, and so this gives us an opportunity to have this little conversation that we're having. So I understood from, is it now Deputy Chief Beal?
Yes.
That there was going to be a new Department General Order or some procedure that was in the works that was going to clarify some of this. Is that still true? Is there something that's still in the works? Can you talk to us about that?
Beal, we did talk about expanding on the website, especially on the area where it says where you can get a police report.
Mm-hmm.
We can put up the PRA form on procedure, and I have a copy of the form if you want to see that.
Rock and roll. We would love to.
And so that's something, but again, the person who does our website, we're going to do that as, there's a lot of different parts of the website that they revamp every couple of years. These are one of the recommendations that we are looking at doing. I have not heard about a Department General Order or bulletin about this.
I suspect that we will do whatever we do with this instant complaint, but that we will hold a further hearing in the future about the police department and public access to records that will give you or Maureen, the sergeant, the deputy chief, whoever you want to send a whole group, whatever it takes, to talk about this and provide whatever website information you have, general orders, forms, procedures, protocols, checklists, all of that fun stuff, because I want to see that we've got something in place so that people can get what they're looking for. And if it's just a police report, there should be a thing that says, here's what you do to just get a police report. Call whoever, write to whoever, whatever it takes. And if it's something else, that explains what you do to get that something else. So that's what I'm looking for and hoping to have that in the future. So I think we acknowledge that the response on this complaint was untimely. we can talk to Mr. Hartz about what else we need to do about that. But I am very interested in this issue going forward, because it seems to me that the police department is a big department, an important department, not that any of them aren't, but that it has a particular public safety and public protection interest, and that we need to see that those procedures are there and are effective. Let me open it up to further Q&A, and then we'll continue.
Lieutenant, just looking at your police department website here as we talk, there's a couple of broken links. The last crime bulletin was 2009, and the search for police report refers you to a page that you have to print out and mail in.
Yes.
So these are all, I think maybe there's a larger problem here. We're interested in our particular problem, but this might be something that you need to escalate, to the powers that be to kind of address these different ways of trying to get information. Doesn't look very functional from what I can see.
Comment noted. Member David?
Yeah, Lieutenant, I guess what I would like to kind of add to Chair Pilpel's comments is that I would love to see the police department do as good of a job in giving the public access to information as they do as protecting the public. And so, I would love to see some steps taken to make it very, very clear on the website how the public can access public information and kind of what is the procedural steps that will make it easier for you guys to provide the public information that is by definition public information, right? Yes. So that's why I think that Chair Pilpel, what he was getting at is that we're going to, I think, ask you to come back and tell us kind of what steps you are taking to do that. And so, but we certainly, as a task force, thank you guys for the work that you guys do in keeping us safe in the city, and we would just love to see people be able to access the information that is their right to access.
Okay, and I appreciate the positive feedback also.
And all we're trying to do is be constructive on this. We're not, I don't believe that you're hiding records. It's just that it's a complicated department and there are records all over the place, and different people are responsible for different things. And so we're trying to, get through that. So thank you. We'll come back in a bit.
Okay.
Let's see. I think, did you have any further clarification or rebuttal?
No, I wanted to give you a copy of the form just so you have it.
Okay.
And Mr. Highland, thank you for your feedback. I'll make sure that our community relations and webmaster at least know about your experience.
Okay. And we'll put this in this file 12018, and we'll also make a copy for a file on police public records procedures, because we will have a further hearing on that. And if you can convene whoever within the department to talk about that, and it may be all of the people that we referenced and then some, including the web folks, the media folks, whatever you need to do and all of that.
Okay.
See how we... Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Hartz, did you have any further clarification or rebuttal, particularly on your instant complaint, so that we can deal with that one way or the other?
I have 3 minutes?
Yes.
Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Government, and this is rebuttal. The police department has tried to minimalize this by saying it was just simply we were a day late. The bottom line was, and you heard it from Sergeant Goss before the entire task force, they wanted to say that the IDR wasn't an IDR. He got in an argument with several of the members of the task force, them saying, you don't decide that, we do. If somebody says it's an IDR, it's an IDR. They didn't invoke an extension. All they had to do was reply to me by the next close of business day, say this is an open investigation, and none of this would have happened. And I have a hard time believing they're not intelligent enough to know that or competent enough to do that. Before I put in the request, I sent an email to Sergeant Goss asking him for an email, and he refused to give me one. I then contacted a police department captain who got back to me in 15 minutes with an address, and I sent the request to 6 different people, including the legal division, the chief, the deputy chief, Ms. Conifrey, and 2 others. And so basically what we're saying is none of them could manage to get this done. Then Sergeant Goss comes in and says, Mr. Hartz is just an unreasonable person. He wants this to be available 24 hours, 7 days a week. And I was in court, so that's why it was late. No, I expect him to set up a procedure which they can comply with the law. And I don't think that's in any way unreasonable, and trying to make me sound unreasonable is a cheap shot. They then went on to invoke an extension after the extension period had already passed. This was a request that was originally made in March, and they came in May and said, oh, well, we're invoking an extension for extra time to respond to this. Well, the time for the extension had already passed, and now they're trying to invoke the extension. And that's not the end of it. So it was not just one little thing they didn't understand. It was thing after thing after thing after thing. And very honestly, I didn't expect you or anybody else to get any change from the police department. I simply wanted to have this document to go before the police commission and put Chief Sir on notice that members of his command do not want to obey the law. They are usually hostile. I think you heard today that they really have not changed anything. And I would not be surprised going forward if what they came back to you was really superficial, if anything. And I do not really believe they want to make these things open to the public. The first complaints I filed against both the police department and the police commission was failure to maintain the index of public records. They still don't have it maintained. If you go on there, it simply lists a whole bunch of things like administrative documents, and if you click the link, it leads you to a link that says various administrative documents. So you can't tell what they have, and you can't form a request, and all of this is really done to make it maximally hard for the individual to request anything, and to make sure that the police department knows exactly who is looking at any single document.
Okay, so now the matters with the task force for motion and deliberation. My inclination here is for us to take no further action on this specific complaint, conclude the matter, but open a further inquiry at a future meeting about the police department and its procedures, and ask Lieutenant Vishwani. I'll get it eventually. I'll work on it. And his team to come back and talk to us further about that.
So moved.
Okay. Actually, do we need to take a motion to conclude a matter, or do we not need to? Right, so why don't we not take a motion and conclude it, but let's
Withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. But with an opportunity for public comment on the instant complaint, understanding that we will discuss police procedures further in the future.
Chair Pyle, I think this is another opportunity for you to take Mr. Grossman's advice to pick a date certain. Don't just put it out there to the call of the chair. I was rather shocked listening to the lieutenant try to justify the PD's website by saying it's excusable because we don't have a PR department. What is this? There are many city departments that do not have their own PR department. I can almost guarantee you every city department has at least one PIO. Do they all now need to have full-fledged PR departments to set up a website that's navigable? I set up websites. It's not rocket science. It can be done on the cheap. It's the year 2013. The days of, oh, we don't have email, and oh, we don't have websites, and oh, we don't know how to use the fax machine, those days are long gone. And for a lieutenant to come down here and suggest that the difficulty Mr. Hartz has had obtaining documents is justifiable because they don't have a PR department is, I'm sorry, laughable.
Further public comment? Mr. Grossman.
Well, with all due respect, I'm not sure the standards of protection are safety and their records for observing the public access laws connect. But I think what you've run into is kicking the can a bit. And since there's nobody in authority whose job is actually on the line, if they don't comply, you're not going to get a lot of compliance. The problem is that over the years that I've been appearing before the task force, the willingness of departments to comply has eroded significantly. And I think the answer is found probably in the enforcement aspect of it. But you can fix that. I mean, you have that capability. So I would ask for a written plan for handling records requests wherever they come in. After all, the Department of Public Works gets tons of them. And they have one man, Frank Lee, who handles them all. You can send them to the department head, to anybody in any division, which you have a right to do under the law. But Frank Lee ends up with it. He knows what he's doing. He knows where to go. And if he has a problem, you hear about it. No ifs, ands, or buts. And the same actually in the Department of DBI, Building Inspection. They have a guy named Sean that does this. It's easy to do. It really is. And the fact is that even though the law requires anybody who has custody to provide copies, it's a lot easier for both the requester and the department if they figure out how to focus it. And I would require something by way of a plan. I would give them 30 days, and I would write it so that if it isn't done, it's not the responsibility of any sub-lieutenant. It's the chief. And if he doesn't do his job to get it done, it goes to the police commission because they're the ones who can tell him that he's not performing as required.
Thank you. Further public comment? Mr. Warfield?
You could give me 30 seconds notice, please. I'm Peter Warfield, Library Users Association. It'd be nice to get 30 days for anything. Notice.
Are we evicting you? No.
Let's proceed.
It is troubling to hear about telling the public where to go with or without the chair's joke. There was another reference to calls being referred to the legal department. I think in general it's understood in any kind of operation, business or government, that people can go to headquarters or to somebody who works there, even if it isn't the exact right person, and pose a question or request something, and it gets routed to the right place. The Sunshine Ordinance, in fact, reflects that as well. So what I'm saying is it shouldn't be up to somebody to get a notice saying so-and-so is out, send us another notice to this other person. There ought to be a simple way to automatically forward it, or, as the chair suggested, a general, or in some other way have an address where responsible people can respond to appropriate requests. it shouldn't be up to the person to track down time after time after time. And I think you've discussed that a little, but I think perhaps the department needs to hear that. It's often happened to me that I leave a message someplace or by phone or send an email and then sign off the computer. I might not get back on for quite some time. It shouldn't be up to me to, oh, so-and-so is out. You should send this to so-and-so, and then maybe they're out, and so on. Section 67.21 says, every person who has custody of a record is a custodian of public records, and such people shall, as soon as possible, and so on and so forth, comply with public records requests. And here's the key point. Such request may be delivered to the office of the custodian by the requester orally or in writing by fax, postal delivery, or email. In other words, if you go to headquarters or you reach somebody in headquarters, that should be it. That should be plenty to get you the necessary routing to the appropriate person who can take appropriate action. There's also 67.22, which refers to the release of oral public information and requires a department to designate folks knowledgeable about the affairs to answer questions when somebody doesn't have a specific person in mind. And I wonder whether that's going on. That's being satisfied. 67.22a, I would urge you to ask this of the police department and also to ask for written information about what they are doing to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none? Okay, so as we discussed, I think we will take no further action and conclude this particular complaint, and we will have a further hearing in the future about the police department forms, documentation, procedures, internal, external, et cetera. Thank you, Lieutenant, and we'll hear back from you. We'll be in contact. Thanks. Before we go on to item 5, and thank you, Mr. Hartz, for bringing the whole issue of the police department and their records management to our attention. Before we go on to item 5, I just wanted to note for members of the committee that I have worked with the administrator and continuing to refine what is in the packet on these referral matters. It's my intent going forward to include the order of determination and any subsequent correspondence, but to exclude the original complaint and supporting documents, because it seems to me that the point that we're in the process is just enforcing the order. So if there's anything further from the complainant or respondent, and that's in fact why there are emails asking for them to respond and provide documents if they choose. And I think we need to add who these went to. But anyway, so I'm trying to refine that. So unless there's any objection from the committee, we will, no? Okay, then we will continue to work together to put in the packet what we need at this stage in the process. Fair enough? Okay, so with that, let's move on to item 5. Madam Clerk Administrator.
Public comment?
Thank you, well done. This is for matters not on the agenda. Go ahead, Mr. Grossman.
I had filed a complaint because the city attorney claimed they had no records that indicated why they cut back on the time of Mr. Threet. Mr. Song kept coming back and saying we had no records, and the task force said that it's not possible that you would send letters to 58 departments and not know how you came to the numbers in each of those for 3 years. I eventually had to withdraw my complaint because the 3 people who were directly involved in the city attorney's office, one had left, and they just didn't seem to me that it was worth it, because I was convinced that once the troublemakers on the task force were replaced by more amiable members, the city attorney would find the time to come to all the meetings. Well, this is a meeting where the city attorney probably should have come. So my question is, has the city attorney's office notified the task force or its administrator that Mr. Threed or whoever is the designated or assigned lawyer to the task force will not have enough time to attend all of the meetings and to do the other responsibilities that an assigned lawyer would have should questions arise or the task force seek some sort of an opinion on subjects before it? You don't have to answer it.
Further public comment?
Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government, and if the administrator could let me know when I have 1 minute left, please. I want to first acknowledge Mr. Grossman's comments and say that basically, I've forgotten what I was saying. Completely went blank. What did you just talk about? What did you just talk about?
City attorney.
Oh, the city attorney. Okay. Several years ago, I did a public records request to the city attorney's office asking what the DCA, who was the advisor to the task force, did as far as hours. They fought me for almost a year. And when they finally produced the records, they showed the person spent 5 to 6 hours a week total. That included attending the meetings. And it's like, okay, so this is under the Sunshine Ordinance, something that's supposed to get the full support of the Board of Supervisors and the clerk of the board and any other staff that's needed, including the city attorney. And they get 5 to 6 hours a week, which is totally unacceptable. That was dropped. Now, going on to some of these other things, as I said before, I've been doing this for several years, and I hope the new members will understand that my low level of patience is a result of literally years of hearing people obfuscate and evade, and these are intelligent people who know what the law is, are fully capable of following the law, but just choose not to do so. And then come in and try to do a song and dance and make everybody believe that, oh, this is the only time, like the previous complaint where it's, oh, Mr. Hartz is the only person who's ever complained about the police department. Yeah, right. Give me a break. Basically, it comes down to the fact that I moved here in February of 1999, and Mr. Pillipel will correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, an election that year was when the Sunshine Ordinance first went on the ballot. And I was very pleased to be in a city where a law like that would pass, and it passed with a 2/3 majority. And here we are 15 years later with city employees coming in persistently saying, we don't know what the law is, it was a mistake, we just can't handle it, we don't know what's going on, we have a lot of requests, yada, yada, yada. And all of their requests are nothing but excuses. At what point
30 seconds.
Do you lose your patience and start to say, wait a minute, my mama didn't raise a fool. Are you really going to come in here and tell me you don't know what the law is? You know what the law is. Are you going to tell me you don't know you have an obligation to follow the law? You know that, right? And that's what I said. The only reason I wanted that determination is so I can go to the police commission and call Chief Sir on the fact that the legal division makes it impossible to get records, and it's under his watch, therefore it's his responsibility. And under the law, he's the only one who can be held responsible.
Further public comment?
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Proposition G strengthened Sunshine and passed in 1999. The Sunshine Ordinance itself had been passed prior to that. So many of the folks that the previous speaker talks about had additional time beyond perhaps 6 years or so more to comply with, learn about Sunshine and so on. The thanking of the lieutenant and those who came from the department without saying a word to the complainant is one example, and it's repeated over and over again in this body in the few hours that I've attended. That, as far as I'm concerned, is evidence of very strong bias in favor of the respondents. It's particularly disconcerting to have the chair thanking the gracious attendance of their royal majesties from the departments when they've already been found as violators and sometimes multiple violators, and not a word to the public who has brought important issues before you for adjudication, both with respect to that particular instance as well as whatever benefit it might have for the public generally with respect to the principles and the practices that it brings to light. The attempt as well to shrink back the scope, which your chair is doing here, the scope of what people may say during their presentations, I think is highly inappropriate as well. People have had an opportunity to state whatever they want in the time that they have. They typically come here after they've won a case at the full task force. As I said earlier on the case that we brought, it is your charge not to shrink and just look at this particular pimple or this particular symptom, but certainly to be willing, education, outreach, and training, be willing to look at the larger picture. Why are there so many violations? Is there something that's going on that's encouraging it or making it happen that way? Is there something you in your own practices can do to improve matters? Those are broad questions that you should be happy and interested to explore. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk Administrator, item 6, please.
Item number 6, establishing new regular meeting date.
Okay, thank you. So we have worked to change the regular meeting date to a date that works for all 4 of our current members, and thank you all for being here. It appears that this room is available on the second Monday at this 3 o'clock hour starting in August. So we are good with changing the regular meeting date at this time with the understanding that it is not currently available in June or July, and so June or July will probably be on other dates, possibly at other times, possibly in other rooms, but we're getting there. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, member of the public during the last meeting
yes.
said that the meetings of the task force and subcommittees are set, and it's my understanding that these meetings are set for a Tuesday, are they not? When did the entire task force decide to change the dates?
So the full task force used to meet on the 4th Tuesday, and that's what's currently reflected in the task force bylaws. The task force changed its regular meeting date from the 4th Tuesday to the 1st Wednesday, I believe, starting in about March of 2012, and did not amend its bylaws to reflect that. That is one of the changes that we will likely make to the bylaws going forward to correct that anomaly. Okay? The committees are set up in the bylaws, but their regular meeting dates, times, and locations are not set in the bylaws. They're set by the committees by action at a meeting such as this, on an item such as this. So Does that address your questions?
With all due respect, that is not my understanding.
Okay. What is your understanding, and how can we address that?
I believe I read somewhere where the meetings are set by the entire task force in the bylaws, and I believe that unless the entire body decides to change the day and time, that we as individuals or individual committees cannot do that. Am I not correct?
My understanding is that the full task force has jurisdiction over setting or changing its regular meeting dates, times, and locations, and that each committee sets its own regular meeting dates, times, and locations, unless there's a provision in the bylaws to the contrary, and my understanding is that there is not. Madam Clerk Administrator, do you have any other information?
The bylaws do not state which day and time in all of its committees meet. So then it's the purview of the chair to decide, set a regular meeting with the agreement of the members.
There you go. So with that, I'm prepared to make the permanent shift to second Monday at 3 o'clock, and thank Member Highland for the highly helpful suggestion to meet at this time. And I am also looking to find a room in City Hall on the second Monday at 3 o'clock in June and July, so that we could meet on those times, even if it's not in this room. And if that's not possible, I will seek to reschedule the meeting to another time, hopefully, maybe like a Monday at 3, since that seems to work, so that we're not off in June and July. I very much want to get back to the complaint that we continued and the other matters that are on our docket, and then getting to the proactive agenda that I've been wanting to get to for some time. So,
could I just address Member Oka's question? Is it a technicality you're questioning, or do you have a problem with that particular date?
No, I don't have. I'm the least problematic member here. I can make any meeting that the chair or anybody calls. I would just like to have a date certain, time certain, every month or whatever we decide. I just don't want to have meetings canceled and not be told why, because that's happened time and again. And, my time is worth something to me, and so is the public's time worth something to them. I think we're doing a disservice to the public by not sticking to a time certain, date certain for these meetings. And I understand that there are problems for some of us making meetings because of our work schedules. However, I think when you make a commitment to do something, as I have, as everybody here has, it is up to them to either decide, well, hey, I can't do this, or make arrangements so that they can attend. And, this is not something that's rocket science. Either you're going to make that commitment to be here, or you're not.
Thank you.
thank you. And again, noting that all of that's true, and finding rooms in City Hall is not easy. So doing what we can and trying to be more regular, because I believe it's important to be regular. Okay, so with that, is there a motion to change the regular meeting to the second Monday at 3 o'clock in this room, 408 City Hall? Starting immediately, with the understanding that that may not happen in June and July. June and July may be at other times, because we don't apparently have
We
this
just
room
started in
available.
August.
So from August forward, we will be meeting the second Monday.
Okay, we can make it effective August, knowing that June and July will still be on the second Thursday, although that's unlikely to happen, so it'll probably be, again, at a different time. But we can have the motion take effect in August.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to do that.
Seconded.
I will so move.
Moved by Member Oka, seconded by Member Highland. And that's to take effect August of 2013. Very good. Public comment?
Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. If the administrator will let me know when I have a minute left, please. Where to start? It may not be in your bylaws, but it is on the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force website that your public meetings are a scheduled day, and you have not made one of those regular meetings this entire year. Who are you concerned about? It seems to be the priority is first city employees. We have to have a meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, although a lot of the members of the public who are going to be most of the complainants probably have jobs, and 3 o'clock is onerous for them. We need to make it convenient for the city to have the meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, let's look at how this was done. As far as I know, when the task force decided to change its meetings, it had an agenda item. It discussed it out in public. It was discussed quite thoroughly, and a lot of things were talked about, including not just the availability of the room and other things. But it seems to me, I'll be honest with you, that like somebody talked to somebody on this task, this EOT, and you came to an agreement out of sight of the public and came here and said, fait accompli, we're going to meet at 3 o'clock on the second Tuesday because we've all agreed that's a good time for us. So the second priority seems to be what's convenient for you. Public sucks hind tit. The bottom line is a lot of the things that are being done under the leadership of the chairman, and this is not a personal attack, it is like what happened last week when all of a sudden, after a complaint I had in the process for more than a year and a half, on a Friday afternoon at 5:30 after close of business, I receive an email saying, oh, and by the way, here's how you have to present your information in the hearing, and we need to have your input in any documents by Thursday noon. No public discussion, no public input. We're simply going to change the procedure that's been in place literally for years, tell you you have to follow it, and deliver it to you intentionally on a Friday afternoon after end of business, 5:38 p.m. when the office closes at 5. I'll be honest with you, you guys are not following Sunshine yourself. And I really do believe you are putting the city first, yourself second, and basically whatever happens, the citizens and the complainants have to live with it. It's just like this thing this morning where they must have known that Mr. Lazar was sick at 8 o'clock this morning, and yet they wait until the afternoon instead of being decent and calling the Clark brothers and saying, we're not going to be there. They let the Clark brothers come and then show up at the last minute and say, oh, we want a continuance now. Treat the public like dirt, and we'll sign off on it.
Further public comment?
Peter Warfield, Library Users Association. Certainly I agree with the previous speaker. I also agree with one of your members. You certainly should have a schedule of regular meetings. What was wrong with the old schedule? We've never heard anything about what was wrong with the old schedule, second Thursday. I did, however, listen to let me talk about the topic sentence. What you're doing is wrong and shameful. It's in complete contempt of what most people in the public have to live with, which is a job, which is school, which is something that takes their work day. And it's completely angled for the convenience of city workers. God forbid they should have to put a minute of overtime and deal after 5. We've heard comments from the chair about wanting to limit the meeting to 2 hours. There's no requirement to keep the meeting to 2 hours. That's somebody's convenience, but not the public. Not for ketchup and not for justice. The public in general is available much more than any other time after business hours. In some cities, public comment in the beginning of City Hall meetings starts at 7 p.m. I listened to a tape of this committee, I believe it was December or January, when Susan Monet was still on it, and there was lengthy discussion about what would suit the committee members. And the chair himself said, well, we should consider 4, 4:30, 5, 5:30. And the next thing I hear when I'm here at the last meeting of this body, well, let's meet at 3. 3 o'clock. Because contrary to what was spoken at the previous meeting, what's convenient most for the members is later. There was no such consideration. Flipped around on a dime. To meet at 3, well, to meet later in the afternoon may require somebody to take off a little early from, for example, a job, especially if they're later down on the agenda. They may still have hope of coming here. 3 o'clock means you've got to take the entire afternoon off. It's at least half a day. And that, I think, is unconscionable for the public. And the public is the party that you should be considering first. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. The motion before us is to change the regular meeting to the second Monday, 3 o'clock, room 408, City Hall, effective August of 2013. Madam Clerk Administrator, that's what you got, right? Okay. Members, can we take this without objection? Without objection? Without objection, the item is passed. And then as to June and July, I will see what we can find either on that date and call it a special or another date. You may want to just check if the first Monday in June and July are available. I'm saying you may, if we can't get the second, we'll see about the first. I don't want us to not meet, so I will work with the clerk administrator to find a room. We'll find a room. Never mind. Okay, so item 7.
Item 7, announcements, comments, questions, future agenda items.
Other than what we've already talked about, I have nothing further. Members?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Nothing further. Is there any public comment on item 7?
Peter Warfield, Library Users Association. You need to have something on your agenda regarding what would help the public and make Sunshine work better, such as a statement of simple, basic public Bill of Rights, a statement of city employee duties. Where there are questions and problem areas, such as the Sunshine Task Force has already previously found, such as the city attorney's incorrect advice about redactions, those decisions and that pattern of decision should be included as well. Those basic expectations on both sides, the folks with the information and the folks requesting the information. You need to think about how to educate people about that and how to require it to be posted visibly wherever the city gets in touch with or interfaces with the public. There's a whole range of other sorts of things that you might consider, but that is an example of what I think you need to do, and that is, on a larger view, how well is Sunshine working, what are the problem areas, and what can be done about those to help everybody involved, rather than just viewing yourselves as a group that's tutoring or educating city departments. Again, I think that Sunshine, applied to Sunshine, would be useful. And I said before, things like requiring it on agendas, on minutes, especially violations, and certainly people's rights in a little bit more detail than what's now posted would be helpful, whether you recommend it as a solution to a particular violator's problem, or whether you consider that for future amendments or as a guideline. Whatever you do, the larger questions, you're having a lot of pimples, you're having a lot of incidents, and the task force is not looking at patterns and what's behind those and what you can do about those. And that's something you should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I look in the mirror, all I see is pimples. Is there anything further before the body? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:12. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.